Hey everyone, you just started reading Nickel and Dimed here. You've gotten through the introduction and serving in Florida. You've also gone through the discussions of both these chapters. I just wanted to make a few points about the questions. So let me read right from the questions. The first one, near the outset, Ehrenreich, speaking of her own sister, employs the term wage slave. What does she mean by this? She actually means a couple things. One thing, the one that kind of everybody gets to, is this idea of living paycheck to paycheck, which is good. This is the idea that you have your paycheck, almost all of it goes towards bills, and there's nothing left to save or for an emergency. And so that's good. The other aspect of this is the idea of poverty and it being kind of an endless cycle. So for those that are working low-wage jobs, for those that find themselves in poverty, it's very difficult because of this living paycheck to paycheck to rise out of poverty. So two things there, two of those points. The second one, what are the three rules the author sets for herself at the beginning of Nickel and Dimed? Does she ever break them? I'll stop there. The rest of that is kind of rough for you guys. So the three rules. First one, no falling back on either her previous work experience as an author or journalist, and no falling back on her education, her college education, her PhD in biology, things like that. She does use those in her approach to this, but she can't, go out for anything in academia or biology or anything like that. So she's limiting herself to low-wage jobs. Let's see. The other one, the second rule here, that she has to take the highest paid job. The third one being she has to take the lowest cost housing. She does break these rules to kind of varying degrees. We'll see why during the actual chapters, as you might guess or imagine, that the lowest cost housing may not be the best, may not be the safest, may not be the most legal. So she does break these rules for, again, various reasons, some certainly understandable. All right, number 3. Early on, the author tells us that she has a PhD in biology. How, if at all, does it figure into the narrative? What does Ehrenreich's scientific training bring to the old-fashioned journalism of the book? We discussed this actually in number 2. With her setting rules for herself, she also sets some other kind of boundaries and guidelines. Even just that approach shows how she's systematically going about this experience. In fact, she calls it, instead of an experience, an experiment. So that obviously goes back to biology and sciences and even the scientific method. And speaking of the scientific method, she has this idea that, she has an idea that she wants to test out. And this becomes very important because it leads us to understanding some of her choices. And that idea is whether or not she can match income to her expenses. And that's kind of the underlying thing. That's what she's trying to find out if she can do. Let's see. This gets us into number 4, actually. Why does Ehrenreich assert in her introduction that a story about waiting for buses would not be very interesting to read? What are the context and rationale for this remark? And given as much, do you agree? I'll let you kind of be in agreement or not. But let's see. This is one of the big criticisms that students have with the book and her experiment. she gives herself a car, a rent-a-wreck, as she calls it. And of course, this is kind of an advantage that she has, and she has other advantages as well. And so she gives herself that. She does not take the bus. A lot of the students criticize her and say, well, a lot of people do have to take the bus and rely on public transportation, and that's not always reliable. Not only is it, as the question implies, not very interesting to read about, hey, I was just waiting for 30 minutes. But remember, her idea is whether or not she can match wages to expenses. So if she's constantly late to work, if she doesn't show up to work, she's obviously going to lose her job. If she loses her job, then she has no income. If she has no income, then experiment is over. There is no way to match income to expenses if you have no income to begin with. So she kind of starts on the best foot possible in order to see if income can match or hopefully exceed her expenses. So there's that part. And in fact, with that criticism, she readily acknowledges that. At the very end of the introduction, she talks about how she is giving herself the best chance to match income to expenses to see if she could do it. And that's why she gives herself the car, that's why she has the bank account, and some of the ties to her previous life and previous resources. But she says she has, like, the best case scenario, she has the most advantages. She fully acknowledges that. And really what we can infer from that is that, true, those many don't have those advantages. They don't have it as easy as Ehrenreich did in her experiment. And so that just speaks to the difficulty. If she has a difficulty with all of these advantages, then someone without all of those advantages are going to find it even more difficult to match the income and expenses. So that's it. That was her preparation, and that was kind of her setup and foundation of the experiment. Next up, we will go into her experience as a server in Florida.